Hi, this is Steven from BGcast.
And this is Diana from Transcending Ascension.
And this is Esoteric Caravan. Alright, so I got a question, Diana. Let's talk about this. What do you think of the acceleration of our conscious energy, the acceleration of the current timeline that we're currently on?
Well, as we were just discussing, so energy makes time go faster. This is something that we are all learning firsthand as these last few years have just like whipped by us in exponential speed, and it comes part and parcel with that accelerated ascension energy.
Well, it's interesting because we actually have a little bit of physical evidence to back this up that time has been accelerating, which is awesome for those who actually need the what I would say the rational proof, because we know a lot of us still in our community are still hanging on to the rational, which I've always said in my past shows that we need to kind of start letting go of it. We need to start being okay with sounding a little weird and a little bit of kooky, but nonetheless, so there's actually been studies done on the Earth's rotation on how it's actually been speeding up, and the days have actually technically gotten shorter, which is very interesting. And don't get me wrong, it's by milliseconds, but yes, there actually has been a physical representation of this acceleration of time that we've all been experiencing, and this acceleration of energy. And of course, we know the energetic and the physical are intertwined. We know that the physical is a shadow of the energetic, so that is the physical manifestation coming forth, which I find really interesting.
Yes, and it lends itself to either help or hinder us when it comes to actually transcending that ascension, because in this ascension time, it's good or bad depending on you and your life journey. Now, if you listen to people like us, you're probably in it for the good side of it, meaning you're aware of what's happening to a large degree. So when we look at it in awareness, and we look at alchemy and the fact that that's what ascension really is, to do it well. Because like I used to say, you're going to get shaken on this planet until you're either shaken awake or shaken to death. And in this ascension, so with that speed up of energy, you can blast through like therapeutic blocks that would take you decades once upon a time, now takes you days. Because we can have these epiphany style revelations that hit us thanks to the speed up of energy, thanks to the speed up of time. And it's going to blast us through. But likewise, if you choose not to go through your darkness, it's going to pummel you with that accelerated energy and just crush you.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And I've actually talked about this on, not just my older show, BGcast, but your show also as well, Diana. That we are definitely in an accelerated timeline. I mean, you have to look, we have all of these spiritual books and all of this spiritual material at our fingertips, which we once used to not have to such a degree. A lot of you have heard me talk about how back in the day, if you were on your spiritual evolution, it would take lifetimes, because you had to hop on maybe that 3-month boat voyage to get to that Himalayan plateau, and then you had to do that 2-week long hike up to the top of this plateau just to get to this one monastery, just to look over this one book or learn from this one teacher. And this is how it used to be done. But now we are in the age where we have all of these books, all of this information, all of this material, and especially new remembrances that are coming forth at the tips of our fingers. So just because we have an accelerated understanding also means we have accelerated healing. And that's something we can absolutely take advantage of in this current timeline. And here's the thing, we aren't even just tied to this current timeline too. We still have the ability to move up. And completely in agreement of what you were saying, Diana, that you are going to be shaken further or you're going to be shaken off. And I think a lot of you who are listening to this right now are completely ready to be shaken further, as Diana and I are. And ultimately, this is where we thrive and we ride.
Yeah, and we dive into truth. And that's where it leads us to the self. And to get shaken in the good way, we dive into truth. Because a lot of the things going wrong in this age is the acceleration of energy, yes, combined with the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius, what are Aquariuses? Now, I'm sorry if you are one, but a lot of us know them. Now, for the age, it's a good thing. But one thing to keep in mind is Aquariuses are probably the most narcissistic sign you've ever met. They're probably the most self-absorbed sign you ever met. Sorry to Jessie, my sister, because I know one personally, and we all know many personally, I'm sure. Aquariuses are one of the more rare signs because they're born in winter. But if you know one, you know what I'm talking about. So as we go into this age of narcissism is what we're going into. And we see that with the Gen Zs, the Gen Alpha, because they were born into the age of Aquarius, especially the Alphas. They are definitely born into it, and the Gen Zs were born into like the new age, that age, and they are all little tiny narcissists, and it's adorable because it's actually for the better good. Because if you watch at the heart of heart, the things that they're bringing forth that matter, that we should care about, actually do matter. We should care deeply about our own feelings in every single matter. Like this neurodivergent and learning about working in workplaces and all these different things, diving into how we care about ourselves and being told like we should throw ourselves to the side once upon a time. And millennials knew that was wrong, but we didn't yet have the new world, so we just kind of sunk around. Where now it's like, yes, it's the age of narcissism in a good way. Know thyself and live your truth.
Well, absolutely. And actually, one thing I really want to touch on that both you and I have talked about too is now we have to start expanding upon the spiritual doctrines and the spiritual experience, because a lot of the material that is available to us is from the age of old. And don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on, or I'm not saying do not look at this material. Of course, obviously some of it is still very tried and true, like Hermeticism, which both Diana and I believe is a good foundation for learning how to operate this three-dimensional realm. But also a lot of the older material has a little bit of what I would call spiritual escapism, and ultimately trying to leave this society and kill the ego to become spiritually ascended and spiritually enlightened. And what we've actually come to find is that this is not the case. I personally feel, and I know Diana personally feels, that we are meant to bring heaven to earth. We are here to bring the spirit into society. It is not the killing of the ego that we should be doing. It is the softening and the aligning of the ego to our highest self. That is the goal that we should be looking for, because ultimately we're still operating here in this third density, third dimension. While we go through this spiritual ascension process, we need that ego to operate here. We all ultimately chose to come here and experience this and assist in this time. So escaping this and leaving this isn't the road that we are here to take. We are here to transmute. We are here to transform. That is ultimately the goal we should be looking at. And through that, we don't escape. We don't run off to the woods and the monastery and leave society and meditate under the treetops, under the waterfalls. Don't get me wrong, you can do that during your day if you wish to take your break from society. Absolutely, a lot of us need our break from society. But ultimately, what we've been sent here is to terraform, transmute the spiritual into our collective existence. Diana, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're here to seed society. So me specifically, not like, because I have the cross of Eden. So if you know human design, you know that it will tell you a lot more detailed and a lot more specifically about you. And seeding society was brought first and foremost to my awareness. That was my mission in life. But it's birthed into more. Like, it's to everybody. Everybody needs to be concerned with seeding society. And this doesn't mean just having children. This means raising them in the way that they know they are God from the very beginning. They know they are God and they hold the ultimate power in their lives. You need to get that through your head as an adult, but they need to be raised that way from the get-go. So it is in their subconscious, because the ego is not the enemy. It is your source of individuation away from God. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. Now, Stephen and I, again, due to our astrology, are naturally inclined towards the spiritual. We have great proclivities towards the spiritual. So it naturally came part and parcel with our life. So it's, let's just say, easier for us in a lot of degrees, because I've done charts for lots of people, and not everybody has the same proclivity, but everybody still needs to aim the same way regardless, into whatever way looks most natural to you. Now, when you're taking the Hermetics as your basis of a philosophy, you don't have to, but when you learn the laws of the universe through the Kabbalion, because it states it the clearest way you could ever understand it. The other Hermetic literature will get there, but it's a lot more convoluted, where the Kabbalion's going to lay it to you straight on exactly what you need to concern yourself with in the laws of the universe. So you can learn to conduct your ego, which even Rudolf Steiner states, I think, as the 4th level of development as a soul, meaning that to be a separated soul away from God, the ego is part of the journey, dead or alive, soul or human, right? We think our soul is part of the human. No. What clinches us down in the human is that reptile brain, is that survivalist brain that we've held for a millennia. That is what we think, because our ego gets very attached to it. Our ego cares about surviving, right? But if we got our ego subconscious, 95% subconscious, if we got our ego programmed with the God brain to perform spiritually, to perform, because the ego is always performing one way or the other, to perform in a way that is conducive to spiritual evolution and alchemy of the self, that is where we step into this age of narcissism with a God expanding self that heals the world and generations to come. When we raise our children and ourselves up, when we seed into society, in our workplaces, wherever we are, and we demand the way the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas do, their due diligence of whatever if you're neurodivergent, if you're a starseed, you probably are neurodivergent. So learn about that and demand what suits you best. Because when you're living your true God self, God will be there to support you. So if that job doesn't support you, God will provide one that does. When you are living from your true divine God self and gearing the ego to lay your life out in that path.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. And touching on what you were saying about the children, I want to even backtrack to that for a second, because I think it's absolutely important, us as spiritual human beings who exist on this planet, to help guide our future generations towards the right mentality and the right information and remembrance. Because as we were talking about here, when it comes to this, I like to use this analogy, and I've always liked to use this analogy. I actually use this analogy because I found it on a meme on the internet a while ago. When you get here, you put on the MetaQuest headset of this existence, right? And so you're essentially putting on a VR headset as a soul, as a consciousness into this existence, your emanation that is currently here. And when you put on this headset, the rules and the programming of this headset, of this false matrix reality that we have built around ourselves. And one of the biggest things I have to think is we have to take responsibility as humanity for allowing this to happen. But this headset we put on has the programming of constantly looking without, constantly identifying to the attachments of this realm. You are identifying by this name. You are identifying by your this race. You are identifying by this number, this certificate. You're looking outward for validation. You're looking outward for love. You're looking outward for the answers to the bigger questions of this life, when ultimately all of this is located within. So having that message within, yes, you will get love from our parents, your parents, obviously. You'll get love from your loved ones, but also there is this love that is within. There is this validation of you being a spiritual being that is unconditionally loved, that comes from within. There's all of these answers that you are looking for to these bigger questions can be found within. And that's one of the programming to this aspect of the programming to this MetaQuest headset that we put on when we come into this reality, and that needs to be rewritten and overridden. And I've talked with Diana before off air about how we have an operating system. Our ego actually creates this operating system when it comes into this reality, and this is like a core operating system. Think about it as we came into this reality with Windows 98, and now we're moving into what Windows 15, or I don't know. I've lost touch with computers as of now. I haven't been on tech as much as you guys know, but now we need to start upgrading our operating system, and so this is how we do it. We kind of go through, the little subsequent programs of the operating system, the behaviors, the thought patterns, the false narratives that we create for ourselves. And we start to instill truth into that. And as we start to instill truth, we start to do away with these subsequent programs from the operating system. And then we get to the operating system itself. And then with the operating system itself, we are redoing the operating system our ego installed into our minds upon coming into this reality. I talked about redoing healing ourselves from the traumas and the subsequent programs that this operating system created through instilling truth and remembrance into our minds and spirits. But after we get to the core operating system, we're going to come to find that our core operating system is a very hard program to work through. And ultimately, what's going to help us override this core operating system is gaining a new perspective. What is a new perspective? So something I've been on, even though I've been offline and off air for a little bit, I have been posting on social media here and there, is the next stage of this evolution for a lot of us is implementing the metaphysical, and this is ultimately what we need to start doing again in our day-to-day lives, is implementing the spiritual and the metaphysical principles into this experience. Because ultimately, we're at a point in our spiritual collective where we're starting to come to what I would call a stone. Meaning that a lot of the available information that is online, like I said, the older spiritual books and things like that, we're starting to tap out on this. We're now entering what I would call a new playing field, a new area. And we're at a point where we've exhausted this information. And we're starting to experience new things in this spiritual evolution. We're starting to have things that aren't in the spiritual books happen to us. We're starting to have remembrances that we cannot find anywhere else. And I've always said this is a big slice of divine humor that we experience, in this day and age, is that everything we see online could be fake and gay, but everything that we experience is real and true, but cannot be proven. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But ultimately, this is how we start to override the operating system that the ego instilled for us to give way for the new operating system, is to gain the new perspective. And we do that by implementing those principles. And what happens is we begin to implement those new principles into life. We build that new perspective. And this is how I really feel that new birth is going to come about. It's going to come from this new perspective. We know that perspective shifts and molds our reality. When we have realization and actualization of remembrance, a spiritual remembrance within ourselves, a lot of us have actually seen our reality follow suit. It shifts. And this is something that my guides have told me multiple times. The more you understand, the more it shifts. So we have to look at what it means to understand. We're all going to have our own unique way of understanding. The way I understand this might not be the way that you understand this, but you have your own subjective understanding within you. And this is ultimately what's going to cause the new perspective to arise. And as the new perspective starts to arise, what's going to happen is not only is it going to start overriding our own subjective programming systems from our ego, it starts to permeate into the collective operating system. Remember, I've said on my show plenty of times that we are these beacons of light. We are part of the conscious aspect of the spiritual awakening on this planet. The ones who are seeing this, experiencing this, feeling this. And then we understand that the rest of the collective that is surrounding us is part of the subconscious aspect of this awakening. They are feeling our waves. They are incorporating our waves. They might not understand the whole greater picture of what's going on, but they're starting to shift in their own way alongside us. So this is why this is important work. Diana, let's get your thoughts on this. I've been talking long enough.
Well, we'll take perspective and switch it to paradigm, because your perspective, the all is mine. The all is mine. So when we say perspective, that is your lived reality. That is your paradigm. Your paradigm is the realm you live within. not all humans are living in the same realm. When you question, like, how can some people live this way and how can some people live that way? Well, there's certain systems that can give you a calculation on what is what. Like, every single channeler has their own different version. Some give it calculations, some don't. Well, if you take the light system, which I'm not saying I buy into everything they're saying, but they're showing us a way that you could actually consider people living in different paradigms. And we know, thanks to Joe Dispenza, who I do vibe with all the way, that there's the different brainwave states, right? That's just basic science. Gamma, alpha, beta, and delta, right? And each different brainwave state brings you a different paradigm of existence. And the point of meditating continuously and touching down to your God self, your inner heart spark, all the different ways we describe it, this is touching down inside into your God self. When you do that, you actualize the God self within you, and that brings your ego more online as the soul, because your ego is fine with whatever it gets to do as long as it's important. So we keep that in mind when we're using the ego to shift our perspectives, to shift our paradigm. You always need to fine-tune the ego and aim it where you need it, and always keep it in checks and balances. So if you meditate very, very well and you get deeply into the God state, yes, you are God, but simultaneously you need to make sure that you don't all of a sudden start bossing everyone around because you've realized you're God. Because guess what? So are they. It doesn't matter what brainwave state they're in, whether you want to consider them an NPC or not, they are still God. They are still a piece of you. Even if you are more God actualized than them, that just makes you more responsible for them, because you are more actualized as God. And we all say, oh, why didn't God save me? Why didn't God help me? Why? You are God. You are God. So why did not you save that person? Why did not you save yourself? That is what you need to be asking yourself, to shift yourself into a paradigm where you live as I am God. But you need to live as the truest, highest, purest God. And this is why we purify. Because as you elevate into your higher self, and this is where we talk about programs, and Stephen was talking about how we're born with these operating systems. Well, all of us that consider ourselves neurodivergent, those are people already born with a different mainframe of existence. And that's why we find ourselves discombobulated in this reality. This is why I say demand that you live to your own standards, but also fine-tune your standards so that you are living in a more copacetic way. Because I know with neurodivergency, things can get blown out of proportion, and you really still need to take care of yourself and your brain and make sure you're thinking reasonably, but in a new perspective, because we are inventing reality. So we are going to be inventing behavior that other people are going to look at us and go, wow, I can't believe you're doing that. Wow, you're so uncivilized. Like walking around without shoes on, or having really long hair that you don't want to brush all the time. Whatever your situation is, that's going to bring you to a truer you, right? And then all these places where weed is becoming legal, being able to smoke weed on the street and not feeling like a hobo, reminding yourself that it's legal and you deserve this, that you deserve what you need to feel like the total God self you deserve to be, because you are that. You are the one inventing your new paradigm, your new reality. That's all up to you. And how you live within it is where that journey is going to take you. It's all up to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one thing I wanted to shift gears and I wanted to talk about a little bit today on this episode is how sensory perception is spiritual perception. And both you and I have been talking about this. Actually, it's very interesting because Diana the other day brought to my attention, and this is just something that I've always had a knack for. Is having sensitive skin and being able to have a huge using my skin as a huge sensory organ. And it's interesting because, like, I was talking with her the other day about this, how, like, out here in Ontario right now, there's a huge tick problem, right? And me doing the work that I do,
Man-made, but yes.
Yes, man-made tick problem. Yes, that's definitely a separate conversation for a separate time. But I was talking about how I was outside doing some work the other day, And I could feel that there was ticks trying to bite me, and I was able to kick them off. And I was trying to explain to her, I was like, well, it's like a very unique sensation that you feel. It's like an itching and a burning at the same time, and you have to be aware of that. You have to get to it before they actually implant themselves. And she actually ended up pulling a tick off her the other day. She didn't even feel it bite her. She was just saying, like, wow, you have like a very, you're very sensory with your skin. And we all have these different talents about us. I would even call them superpowers, these sensory superpowers. And one of the biggest things that we start to understand is that there is in this new perspective, there's going to be an aspect of sensory perception that comes into play. And we understand, guys, for all of you who have been on this spiritual evolution for a while, and have dived into this esoteric information, we know that words really fall short and a lot of what we're experiencing here and what we're trying to describe.
But that's why Stephen and I put our actions where our words were. That's why we realized we should be together, and we are together now. That's why we keep each other in check now. With two people that are together spiritually, and our other friends, which you might know, Dawn and Spinge, do the same thing for each other. We can keep each other in check. So that's one way we can tell you that you can set yourself up physically for a better life, is find yourself a physical, spiritually enlightening partner as well. And one that's aligned, not just because they're enlightening, but also because you're in love with them. But your souls will easier recognize each other. So it's wild. Like Stephen and I almost had to fight this off, but our souls were like, no.
Exactly. No, that definitely helps. But and honestly, I know a lot of you who are listening to this have been with us both through this journey. And I want to say it's been absolutely amazing. But, nonetheless, as I was saying, this is what's going to become a spiritual perception of ours, is this sensory perception. Really good. So we were watching the show Humans, Diana and I were watching the show Humans. I definitely recommend it. It's a very interesting show. But so they have these basically what they're called synths, and there are these very human-like androids, but one of them had lost their memory, and her memory was actually stored in her nervous system, the signaling that was going on in her nervous system. So this is kind of what I want you to start thinking about as we move into this new perspective, and we start, moving into this sensory perception, this spiritual perception. I'm using this analogy to describe to you that her actual memory and her actual
higher God self, he means, because she was a conscious being hidden beneath her programming.
Exactly. So this is where we have to start branching forward. We have to start understanding that this is what the new perspective is going to hold. This is the sense we are diving deeper into this. So this is what we need to start looking for when we start implementing these spiritual and metaphysical principles into our everyday reality. There's going to be information that comes through in very new and interesting ways. You could have a sensation that all of a sudden bursts forth into a mental image within your mind that's giving you these details, that's giving you these...
Yeah, a lot of our downloads come in these packages. They're like thought-form packages that just unpack inside you.
And ultimately, you're going to be differentiating and distinguishing what these are in your own special way, but this is what we need to start looking for. And this is what we need to start opening ourselves up into experiencing, is this new sensory perception, because this is what's going to catalyze the next level. This is what's going to catalyze the new perspective of what we call New Earth. And I know a lot of people are getting tired of the term New Earth, and I'm not going to debate.
I think we're already on it. We're just struggling to live on it.
Exactly.
Because the frequency is higher and we're not good enough. All of us.
Well, exactly. And then we even have people like Sarah L. Caldy, the alchemist, stating that we've already entered this split.
We did it in 2012. It's just been alchemating ever since, like alchemizing into the space.
Absolutely. And now we're in, and of course, this talking about the operating system that we were touching on before, our minds as being part of this operating system too.
We are, because collective consciousness, the collective human consciousness controls a large egregore, a large thing that's beyond being an egregore, that is just a program on this earth. So even though Earth went through an ascension process at 212, we might not even be in the same location. The human collective consciousness remained intact during that transition, but that's when we all got shaken. A lot of us, that's when I was forced to just put my boots to the ground and start really forcing myself
to move forward. Okay, and I'm sure a lot of you who are listening to this at this point in time, you've gotten to a point where you feel the same way as we do. It's like almost like a stone wall. We can't keep looking back at the information of old. Yes, we can utilize the information of old to help pave the way for the information and the remembrance of new. Okay, but we can no longer die on the hill of the old information and think that this old information has the biggest stake in this new current age that we're in. And this is what I mean by we have to start
It depends how you're reading it, though, because if you read the Bible openly and poetically, it can say a lot to you. But you have to learn how to read the old material. You can't read it literally. It has to be open and poetic. Same thing with channelers. There's a lot of things you can learn from a lot of people, but you have to stay open. And as you circulate through all the information, you'll learn that there's common themes. That's why I say the book Kybalion. The book Kybalion has been yet to be proven wrong by anything. It's the most fairly stated, obvious information that's plainly put. So there's a lot of things out there. You just have to learn how to look and how to put it into yourself accurately.
I would agree with you on that. We actually talked about this. You and I were talking about this the other day with the whole story of when Jacob wrestled with the angel,
Yes.
right? On how I at least saw in my perspective what it stood for is the battle between the ego and the higher self. Especially if they're not in alignment. Jacob being the ego, the angel being the higher self, and then what happens is the higher self is ultimately victorious. In this. But what happens is after the defeat of the ego from the higher self heals the ego, and then the ego becomes in alignment with the higher self, what we were just recently talking about a little bit ago on this podcast. So this is what at least it means, at least in my eyes, to look at it through an open and poetic way.
Exactly. Because it's all about reprogramming your mind. So you could reprogram your mind with Edgar Allan Poe. You could reprogram your mind with Eminem, because a poem is easier going to reprogram your mind. There's something about rhymes. They better reprogram your mind. Old mantras written in Sanskrit are better going to reprogram your mind, because Sanskrit's written in an ancient language that mathematically lines up with sound coordination, which even more provenly so does ancient Hebrew. It has been very much scientifically proven. And then they say Sanskrit's the same, but Hebrew's proven to be just sound. Like elf is the sound of elf. It makes that sound, and the symbol that represents it is that sound. So when we look in and find there's not a lot of ancient Hebrew music, you're going to find more Sanskrit, but if you can find it, which it exists, I have some myself, listen to it, because it's going to reprogram your mind with ancient, mathematically correct sounds. Sound healing for the same way. You're with the solfeggio frequencies. They are going to reprogram your mind for higher frequencies. We need to get rid of the old programmings. Money doesn't grow on trees. Yes, it does. Over 100 years ago, most of the gold that existed in that cavern, I forget what it's called. If it's the Fort Knox one, this is a European one, and it split open and stole most of the gold that existed on the earth with all the rich people.
Yes.
They have been making up money ever since. Money is amazing. Why do you think governments can give each other billions, trillions? They don't have that. They're making it up. Why do you think in COVID, especially here in Canada, they paid everyone to stay home? Where did they get that money? They made it up. They make up money. Guess what? That means you can make up money too. And I do the same thing in my own life. You can make up where money comes from. You allow it to come from multiple sources. You allow it to come in all these different ways. The only thing that needs to happen here is you need to believe it's possible. Whatever you can truly believe in, 95% subconscious. That's why we're always reprogramming that self, because it is the God self though, but God is sleeping inside you basically. And you need to draw awareness to yourself to hold God. Like, you know how you can become lucid in a dream? You are trying to force God to be lucid in the dream that is you. And you can. God will tune into you when you tune into the God self within.
This even kind of goes, I want to backtrack a little bit to what you said earlier. So this is, a common saying that, has come forth a lot, especially in our spiritual evolution, that God only helps those who help themselves. And, one of the biggest things Diana brought up a little bit ago, I'm just good. Yes, and in order for you to facilitate that frequency of God within you, you have to move forth with the intentional action is these little things that you do to bring yourself closer to your highest alignment. Whether it is, one of the things I would talk about on my show a lot is like, what do you want to do? Do you want to start a podcast? Do you want to open a business? Do you want your life to be this? You have to start making the moves. This is how manifestation works. This is how tuning into having the God frequency overcoming works, is you have to work towards it. And there's many different ways of doing it. I've always been a big fan of the head, hearts, and hands method. It's very tried and true when it comes to manifestation and bringing yourself to the highest alignment. You think about what you want in your head, you feel it as it's right in your heart, and then the hands get to work. Now, the hands can be physical hands or they can be metaphorical hands. That is the truth. So ultimately, this is where it comes into, when, as Diana was talking about the soul fed frequencies and reprogramming us, the mere act of wanting to be reprogrammed, the mere act of putting forth action. It doesn't have to be intense mega steps every day. It can be a little baby step. Instead of watching that viral vapid video in your freaking, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too, because I think a lot, guys. Me being having a little bit of autism and ADHD, my brain can be overactive sometimes. And sometimes I like to sit there and have it be a little bit not overactive, but at the same time too, even in those cases, you can choose the content that you can take to be enriching, even if it's not something that's exactly mentally stimulating and it's mentally calming. You can have it be a different kind of content. The content that we intake is such a big deal when it comes to reprogramming ourselves. Are we still watching the negative? Are we still taking in the viral? Are we still taking in the vapid? Okay, because these aren't enriching us. So if you want to calm your mind, you can calm your mind to something. I mean, shoot, even looking at a waterfall. Just a video of a waterfall is even better than watching something that's viral and vapid or something that's mindless.
The split screen stuff the kids watch today, where half of it you're watching someone do something stimulating and half of it you're watching a different video, which is just someone overlaid pretending to be doing something someone else already did. It's absolutely insane. But it's showing that the collective consciousness and the actual human brain power is expanding, and the brain is very, very thirsty for information. So fill up that thirsty brain with good information, because there's just as much good information now, or maybe not, but it's easy to find. And you search it out and try not to watch the stuff written by AI. Okay, it's one thing to use an AI voice, because I used to do that, but I don't even do it anymore because I don't want to blend in and look like one of them. It was the one thing to use a voice to say your words because you didn't want to do the voiceover. It's another thing to have the AI completely write your script. And then there's a difference between helping the AI write your script to the people that wrote clearly just a couple sentences of a prompt for an AI to write an entire video. And you can tell because the AI will circulate around the point and never clearly state anything. And it's dangerous because the AI just learns to circulate key points. It's not actually trying to teach you anything relevant. It's one of the most dangerous things to our soul I've seen. And using AI to teach you about God, I mean, really.
Well, exactly too, and this kind of this is even segueing into an even bigger.
You ever hear the term lattice? Run away.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing too, is that more and more people too are becoming, I guess you could say, on the vibe when it comes to ditching AI. I mean, I know there's a lot of spiritual creators.
Well, Gaia TV now has AI first page as soon as you walk in.
I know, that's a little bit disappointing. But ultimately, what this is guys, it's a renaissance time. It's a renaissance period. Okay, and yes, the official renaissance has.
It never ended. It was snuffed out, and that's why it's back.
Exactly.
Because they didn't finish what they started.
Exactly.
They were distracted away from it.
Exactly. So ultimately, yes, I'm gonna in agreement with Diana.
I wonder why the Spanish flu happened. It's not an accident.
Intake more content that is made by humans, not by AI. Okay, and I even see the AI viral spiritual videos where they kind of use,
key terms that they know we like. So, oh, you're a starseed. What kind of starseed? And then they repeat these vapid things.
Well, too, I even saw like this. So, like, there's a guy who used this video. He was talking about how you shouldn't drink water, and that that water is bad for you. And that you should
throw that in the garbage.
Only hydrate through food. So I'm not disagreeing with the hydrate.
If you eat nothing but fruit all day, yes, sure, but you don't, do you? Do you eat fruit all day? Do you live in the Caribbean and you can eat fruit all day? No, I don't. You don't.
And not all water is created equal. Obviously, there is living water and there is dead water. But at the same time, that's
not dead.
But yeah,
you can't kill water. It's just just incredibly disturbed water.
Incredibly disturbed water. There you go. We got
Lackluster water.
lackluster water. Disgruntled water.
Disgruntled, yeah.
But ultimately too, we know the power. I mean, even diving back to, even talking about water, diving back to Dr. Masaru Emoto, you can definitely implement your own intention on the water itself. So, but nonetheless, guys, it looks like we have just reached our destination.
We're home.
We are home, and we want to say thank you for checking out this episode of Esoteric Caravan with myself, Stephen, BG Cast, and Diana, Transcending Ascension. We will be doing more of these. We miss all of you. We know that we've been off air for a while.
Sorry for the in and out. Our mic is the same mic I used to use on my computer, but it didn't want to stay in the phone. So.
But we hope you guys enjoy this, and we want you to know we are coming back. We are being called to this. Diana and I, we're just...
Well, we never stopped being called, but...
yeah, we never stopped being called. But Diana and I were just enjoying ourselves and enjoying our new life together. And I just want to say...
Thanks for tuning in, and we will check you out again soon.
Take care, everybody.